Kyle Rittenhouse is not a racist, he's not a murderer, and what he did was self-defense. Rittenhouse was in a town neighboring where he lived, where he worked regularly, and he was a lifeguard. So he was already a lifesaver. He was already what we call in the sheepdog class. He was already someone who was putting himself in harm's way to help other people out. And it seems to be a beautiful thing in him that it was inculcated in him at such an early age that his duty as a young man was to help others and to be there for others and stand in the gap. What we find is not the lies of CNN and other TV affiliates. In the real facts of the case, we're seeing it's coming out that he was there. He'd been there earlier in the day as doing his duty as a lifeguard. Then afterwards, he was volunteering with the local school folks, cleaning up the schools and removing graffiti. Then when he was out there and he was called upon to help defend property of a businessman who'd lost almost everything he had, he and his friends went there. And herein lies the rub. Why was a 17-year-old having to go out there and do a man's job? It is an indictment of all of the men of Kenosha that refused to go out there and help the police stand down the rioters and stand up and protect the businesses of your town and your county. That a 17-year-old had to go out there and put himself in harm's way and conducted himself in a righteous manner. He was rendering aid with his first aid kit to people that were out there breaking the law. He was still not judging anyone, but offering help until such time as his life was threatened by a man that we have video of who already said repeatedly, shoot me, and I won't say the whole thing, even though I'm not scared to say the thing. I don't want to get censored on YouTube on that one. That fellow was shot and killed, ostensibly by Rittenhouse, and then the second attacker who tried to kill him with a skateboard. And if you've not been hit with a skateboard, I've been hit with a skateboard nearly that hard in my shin and it nearly broke my leg. Don't sit there and say that his life was not imperiled by someone trying to kill him with a hard, large piece of wood bigger than my nightstick that I used to carry. Then the third man tried, after he was forced to shoot that guy, as he was retreating, looking for the police to turn himself in. He was being chased. After the second attacker was shot and killed, the third attacker came and pointed a handgun at him at point blank range, and Rittenhouse was a fraction of a second faster on the trigger, which saved his life. And that guy with a gun that intended to kill him and testified afterwards on record saying that he regretted not having emptied his magazine into Rittenhouse and murdered him. That was his regret. This man received less than lethal injuries to his arm and saw what an AR-15 or a high-powered rifle round will do at point-blank range. I have no feelings of sympathy for him other than the gruesomeness of his injury. But when you set about to murder someone, you have forfeited your right to life. Let me say that again in a way that you can get your mind around. In Genesis 9 and 6, and I'm not good at always pointing out chapter and verse, but on this one is so crucial to God's law that I have memorized chapter and verse. It's God said to Noah after the flood that if a man shed another man's blood, by men his blood will be shed. The moment that you shoot or attempt to murder someone, according to American law and God's law, you have forfeited your right to life. You no longer have a right to life because you have the right under God's law to do almost anything you want to do. God even allows you to sin. He doesn't make you not sin. He commands you not to sin, but he doesn't force you not to sin. So you have unlimited rights except that you cannot violate the rights of another. And this is something that you don't hear from BLM and Antifa. You don't hear about our rights and the fact that they're burning and destroying other people's property is a violation of someone else's rights, which means they have surpassed their right. You don't have an entitlement. You have rights given by God and protected by the U.S. Constitution and the state constitutions, none of which allow you to steal other people's stuff because you have, quote unquote, a need, none of which allow you to murder someone else because of them having a different ideology or you having the perception they've done something wrong. If Kyle had murdered the first guy that was shot, then even then we did not have the right to murder Kyle Rittenhouse. Our obligation, their obligation as U.S. citizens, was to grab him for the police and hold him for the police to come and take him into custody, to be given a trial, have witnesses come forth, convict him if there was a true grounds for conviction, and then have him summarily executed if that was the conviction. They did not have the right to murder him. That guy was attempting to murder Rittenhouse. And this is something the news is not talking about. This was planned, just as the murder of Aaron Danielson after the fact in Seattle, Washington, as supposed retribution for the Kenosha shootings that were self-defense shootings. This attack on a Patriot Prayer member was conducted as a pure execution and was done with multiple parties involved. It was a conspiracy to commit. You can watch the video for yourself and see the crowd. And yet, people in the media, other than InfoWars, Band.Video, Matt Brack and others are pointing out that this is a concerted effort to create and use terrorism to push the political end of these communist revolutionaries. This was done intentionally, and they wanted Rittenhouse shot. They wanted, initially, maybe the last guy with the paramedic hat wasn't going to pull the trigger. Maybe he was trying to get the optics of having a Trump supporter or someone that was perceived as a Trump supporter shoot one of their people to make a martyr. Obviously, after the shot was fired, he started screaming like a baby, bleeding like a lamb for a medic, like he was some soldier, when he was not. He was a simple common thug. He realized the error of his ways, that maybe getting shot for somebody else's agenda isn't worth it. Hopefully it will send a message out to other rioters that this is what happens. We are playing for keeps here. We will not surrender our republic freely to you. We will not lay down arms or stack arms before communists. We will resist communism, and we will quell all insurrections and civil wars that are attempted as revolutions to supplant the lawful government of our states. So whether you like it or not, the facts have unfolded, and if you're Christians, you better be on the right side of the subject. Your pastors had better know the facts, know about what's going on. These things are affecting us at a state and county and city level, at a community level. This stuff is coming to a neighborhood near you, and you have to be on top of it. You need to be on the right side of history and the right side of these issues so you're biblically correct and sound in what you say. The world is watching. They are amazed and shocked at what we are allowing to happen in our streets. It is the duty of every man in his community to stop rioting, looting, and murdering. This is an indictment of the people of that region of Wisconsin that could have responded. This young man should not have been forced into that situation. He should have been, if he was there, he should have been standing there with a 20-something or a 30-something or a 50-something-year-old with a firearm as well, helping out. He was going and running back and forth from the gas station, giving assistance and medical treatment to people that were injured and got cut off, and that's when he was cornered by this guy who probably mistook him for another man that he'd already told 3 times to shoot him, and dared the guy to shoot him and mistook that Kyle for that guy. It doesn't matter the facts of the case. The fact is this kid was in the right place at the right time to make a difference for his community and for the general region. But it's funny that they want to impose this special set of rules in Rittenhouse's case, but not in all cases. This is not equally applied. This is not what it appears to be. And you better get on top of this as Christians and have the right answers, because this kind of violence, the moment your community has any kind of shooting involving police or people of different skin colors that can be exploited by Antifa or BLM, they will be in your community rebel-rousing and doing the same thing. If I get a speeding ticket and get pulled into a Wendy's parking lot, I don't burn down the Wendy's in protest of cops writing too many traffic tickets. But that's what they jolly well did when there was a shooting with a man who fought 2 police officers, got one of their weapons, and tried to shoot it at them, and they shot him, and then the Wendy's was burned down. What did Wendy's have to do with anything? This is all masquerading as skin color and racial issues. I'm here to break a bubble for any of you, mostly Northerners that may not have had as much experience with the black community as we have, who have in the South lived with blacks from the first time that they set foot on this continent. until today, where we've lived in harmony with them for 200, 350 years roughly, that you don't seem to grasp. There is only one race, the human race. Your skin color varies in your ethnic group, not just between ethnic groups like blacks and whites or European, Anglos, Caucasians, whatever you want to call them, Asians and Latinos and everything else. In the Latino community, there's 30 different shades of skin color. In the Black African community, my friends, go ask my friends in Nigeria how many shades of black there are in Nigeria alone. So it's not about skin color, it's one race, the human race, and this stuff that the communist agitators and socialists and globalists like George Soros are pushing to destroy our social contract in America, that is that we will not rob each other, we will not rape each other, we will not murder each other. That's how societies exist. It's not merely through the threat of force. It is a social contract, a general morality in our communities. What we are seeing manifested in America today is not a failing of race. It is a failure of the church to be salt and light and teach morals to a sinful world. There was a day in America when sinners adhered to the Judeo-Christian ethic as sinners and died and went to hell, but lived a moral life generally because they accepted our social contract. They knew what it was to be an American, which meant you didn't rob, cheat, or steal, and you sure as everything didn't murder anybody. So sitting here trying to blame everything on Kyle Rittenhouse and say he could have avoided it. Yeah, Kyle could have avoided this whole mess by doing the same thing as the rest of you and sitting at home in his armchair eating Cheetos and watching a stupid NFL football team take a knee and whining about not having enough money. Instead, he chose to go out in the community and try to protect people and protect their future. And look what he got. The world wants to sell this to you. BLM and Antifa want to sell this to you so that you will sit down, shut up, and stay home. But I'm here to tell you, you better do your duty and defend your communities. You better back up your local sheriff. You better back up the lawful orders of your local county council. And I'm not talking about this BS. I'm sorry to use that kind of language in a church, but that acronym is apropos. It is bull scat to say that surgical masks block any virus. And I defy you, even Walmart is selling those little scarves that they said were equally acceptable because somehow they block it. They've had to, because of legal liabilities, the manufacturer has a label on the back of each one of those scarves that says, not for medical use. So quit acting like a bunch of cowards sitting at home hiding behind masks and a television set going, oh my goodness, things just ain't safe as they used to be. Just times are bad because it's just a sign of times. No, it's a sign that you didn't do your duty. You weren't salt and light. You didn't teach these children from the time they were children what their obligation was, what their responsibilities were, what we expect out of a U.S. citizen, what behavior is acceptable and what behavior will get you shot. There are times when someone has to be shot like a dog in the street. We have seen it in the wild, wild west when these evildoers would come into a town and murder people and go absolutely hog wild, and the local posse would have to posse up and gun them down like dogs in the street. But they did so to say, we will not accept this level of evil in our town. It is an indictment of everyone in that area that a 17-year-old from a neighboring city that worked there had to put his life, his fortune, and his future at risk to defend your future, your property, and your lives from rioters. So for those of you that want to get all bleeding heart on me and get mad at me for telling the truth, too bad. We are facing a day when there's going to be a separation, obviously now, of the sheep from the goats, the true from the false. The money-grabbing charlatans that want you to sit in a pew and just hand them your money while you don't have a job and your economy is shut down to destroy your nation on purpose, on purpose, on purpose. And there are those of us that are going to tell you the truth. Not because we want to see people running and gunning, not because we want to see people killed, but because if we do not stand up and be salt and light, This blood is nothing compared to the bloodshed of a communist revolution. You haven't begun to see what bloodshed will come of this kind of toleration of evil. You have no clue what it's like, except those of you that have immigrated to this country, that have fled those kind of countries, those of you that have escaped the wickedness of Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, Venezuela, all the banana wars that were prosecuted by American corporations and others meddling in Latin American issues. Those of you that had to escape Russia and come here, those of you who had to escape Cuba. I've got friends who immigrated here from Cuba to get away from Castro. They know what kind of bloodshed is coming if we don't stand up now while it's easy. And if you won't stand up for Kyle Rittenhouse and his right to defend himself, even if he found himself in a place he should not have been. I've gone places I should not have been. You've gone places you should not have been. That does not negate your right to live through your mistake. If you don't stand up now while it's easier and say, we're not going to accept it, and demand your peace officers be peace officers, not child kidnappers, not drug dealers, not mask enforcers, but peace officers. Officers who go out there and say, no rioting on my watch. If you don't stand behind those men and women and stand there and fill in with them and say, you'll do your jobs or we'll find somebody who will. If you don't make your mayors enforce the law. Every mayor of this country took the oath of office that I took. And those mayors in these big cities are going to pay the price. Either their citizens will slaughter them if those cities completely melt down, they'll kill them. Because they have cities full of wild animals almost running about now. Out of control youth that I talked about in another video. Either they'll be killed by them or we will put them in prison for their involvement in these insurrectionist acts. But you do not get to sit back and do nothing and then look down your nose at Kyle Rittenhouse, who got involved. You know, there's a difference, and this is not a biblical thing as much as just an observation I've made through life. Who's worse? The man who did nothing and something bad happened, or the man who tried and failed, but at least attempted to do something to help the situation? Actually, it is biblical, I guess, because Jesus gave a parable. God himself gave a parable of two sons. And the father asked the sons to do something. And the first son said he would do it and didn't do it. The second son said he wouldn't do it, but then repented and went back and did it. The second son was the right son. I believe that even when we make mistakes or even slightly misguided in trying to do the right thing, those of us who take action are more pleasing to God than those who sit back of us in judgment and do nothing. Because God said explicitly in the New Testament, be ye not hearers of the word. Remember that one? Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. It's easy to sit back and claim that the Bible says I can't get involved, but the fact of the matter is the Bible says you are to get involved. You are to be salt and light. You are to enforce justice, because in America, we the people are the government of the United States. Every person in that county of age is responsible for everything that happened in Kenosha, either directly or indirectly. They're the ones that have to be law enforcement. And if your sheriff, if your chief of police, if your mayor, if your city council, if your county council won't do its job, guess what? That doesn't abdicate your authority as U.S. citizens to gather up your posse and do what has to be done. And I promise you, if you go there and surround City Hall and say, get out here and do something or we'll clean it up, you will get some results. But it is an indictment for Kyle Rittenhouse to be the whipping boy of a bunch of slackers that refused to do their duty and a bunch of men who didn't show up. We're down to the days of Deborah again, where there's not even enough good men in Israel to be judges, and it falls to women and children to do the duty of the men.